I used to love silence. The kind you get early in the morning before the city wakes up. It was the sound of possibility. Now silence is just a void. It's been 8 months since the accident. 8 months since Liam, my husband, left. And the only sound I hear is the terrifying echo of my own questions. I stopped going to my art studio. The light felt too harsh, the blank canvas too demanding. I started believing the worst thing about grief, that it's infectious. And I deserved to keep it all to myself. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want the cliches. I especially didn't want gut. I know I shouldn't say that. My mother, bless her soul, would say, Jasmine, faith is when you can't see the way. But I didn't just lose Liam. I lost my voice. I lost my direction. I lost my trust. I was angry. Furious, really. I remember standing in the kitchen, throwing a mug against the wall, and screaming into the sudden silence. Why me? Why him? But the worst part of my anger wasn't that I was shouting. It was that I felt utterly and completely unseen, like I was suffering through a test. But the teacher had left the room. And I had a secret, a very dark one, that I was afraid to even whisper to myself. I was starting to wish the accident had taken me instead. Grief is lazy. Likes routine. My routine was wake up, go to work. I teach art history now, which is ironic, since I can barely stand to look at color. Come home and then escape. My escape wasn't a bottle or a bar. It was a park bench. It was one of those sprawling old parks downtown, right next to the river. I'd sit there every day at lunchtime and I'd just watch the water move. Moving water never asks questions. It doesn't judge. This goes. And I'd stare at it, wishing I could be that fluid, that unburdened. I had a specific routine on that bench too. I'd take off my wedding ring, turn it over and over in my palm, and then tuck it away in my pocket before I walked back to the office. It was my physical acknowledgement of the change. A habit of hiding my pain, even from the sunshine. One day I was sitting there doing exactly this. My head was down and I was running my thumb over the inscription on the inside of the band. It said, "Always my light." And the bitter taste of those words, the hypocrisy of it, given my current darkness, was overwhelming. I was so absorbed that I didn't notice him at first. He sat down on the far end of the bench. I didn't look up. I just assumed he was one of the many elderly gentlemen who read the paper there. I tried to make myself smaller, a little less available to the world. But then I heard his voice. It was soft, gravelly, and kind. "It's heavy, isn't it?" he said. I tensed up immediately. "Stay focused on the water, Jasmine." "I'm sorry." I mumbled, not looking at him. He didn't push. He just shifted his weight and cleared his throat. "The weight of the unsaid word," he clarified. I finally looked over. He was an older man, maybe mid-70s. Well-dressed, neatly groomed, with eyes that were too clear, too steady for a stranger. He wasn't staring, just observing. Like a friendly professor. My pulse started to quicken. There was something about the way he said unsaid word. It felt too close. Too intentional. "Sir," I said, trying to be polite, "I think you have me confused with someone else." He smiled, a small, sad curve of the lips. "Perhaps. But does it matter? The burden is still there." Then he did something that absolutely froze me. He didn't look at my hand, which was now tightly balled in my lap. He looked me right in the eye, and without any preamble, without any possible way of knowing, he asked very quietly, "Tell me, why are you afraid to live for him?" I stumbled over my words. "What do you mean? I loved him. I miss him. I'm grieving." He didn't move. He simply nodded patiently. "Grief is love with nowhere to go. I understand that. But you're not just grieving his absence, Jasmine." My name. He just used my name. I hadn't told him my name. "You're grieving the loss of your excuse to stop. You told yourself you only had to hold on for him. And now that he's gone, you feel justified in letting go of your own life, don't you?" The air went out of my lungs. He was right. That was my secret. The one I kept in the deepest chamber of my heart. I didn't just miss Liam. I resented that his death had exposed how empty my life was when he wasn't there to give it shape. I had been slowly dying inside, and his passing had just given me permission to quit fighting. Tears started welling up hot and fast. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, unable to meet his gaze. "It's a common thing," he continued, his tone softening to pure compassion. You tied your faith to his presence. You told yourself, if I'm good, if I pray, God will protect him for me. When God took him, you took it personally. You thought God broke his promise to you. And the darkest whisper in your heart is, God saw my faith wasn't real and he punished me for it. I finally managed to whisper, how do you know all this? He leaned forward just a fraction. Because I asked God what to tell the grieving woman who sits here every day, hiding her wedding ring and secretly wishing for an end. I flinched. The specificity of the detail, the ring, hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't guessing. This was impossible. But why would God tell you? Why not me? I'm the one on my knees every night, even through the anger. I'm the one who needs the answer. He nodded sadly. Perhaps God knew that if he spoke directly to you right now, you would dismiss it as your own desperate wish. You've put up too many walls. You've decided he isn't trustworthy. He then said something that reframed my entire existence. The ultimate proof of your faith isn't when you pray for protection and it is granted. The ultimate proof of faith is when you pray for protection, and it is withheld and you still choose to believe in his goodness. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple, smooth gray river stone. He placed it gently on the bench between us. This isn't just about Liam. It's about your soul. Liam's purpose was fulfilled. Yours is not. Your faith was built on a condition, that you wouldn't suffer. God is asking you now to build it on his nature, that he is good even when the suffering is real. I remember thinking, I don't know who you are, but you know me better than I know myself. I picked up the stone. It was cool and weighty in my palm. A reminder of the earth, of reality, of something solid to hold on to. I started to cry, but this time the tears weren't angry. They were a release. A flood that finally broke the dam of my self-pity and resentment. I wasn't just grieving Liam. I was grieving the loss of my condition-based faith. And that hurt even more. I don't know how to start again, I choked out. Everything is a reminder. The house, my job, my own skin feels alien. He said, you don't start with a giant leap of faith, Jasmine. You start with the smallest thing you can be grateful for. The single, unbroken piece of glass after the cup shatters. The way your lungs still pull in the air without your conscious effort. He paused, letting me absorb the simple weight of that instruction. You think God is far away because you can't hear him screaming from the mountaintop. But he's not. He's in the quiet mercy that still lets you draw breath. He is in the empathy he put in a stranger's heart to sit next to you today. He is in the cracked places of your soul because that's where his light can finally get in. I looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time. The depth of his kindness was terrifyingly beautiful. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Not the void of before, but a silence that felt full of shared humanity and divine grace. I felt something shift inside me. The weight wasn't gone, but I had learned how to lay it down. Thank you, I whispered, my voice rough. Thank you for all of this. I don't know who you are, but you've given me more than 8 months of therapy ever could. He simply smiled, a very final, knowing smile. He stood up slowly, putting his hands in his pockets. I gave you nothing, Jasmine. You simply opened your hand to what was already being offered. I stood up too, ready to ask him his name, ready to offer him a coffee, a meal, anything to thank him. Wait, sir. Who are you? He paused, turning to look back at me one last time. The light was suddenly incredibly bright around him. I had to squint. I am simply a man who was sitting on a park bench, he said, his voice now almost indistinguishable from the rustling leaves. And you are a woman who finally remembered that she is loved. Not because of her perfection, but because of her wounds. Then he turned and walked away. I watched him go, but as he moved behind a cluster of trees near the river bank, it was like the light consumed him. He didn't emerge on the other side. I rushed over, heart pounding. There was no one there. No back path. No hidden corner. Just the sound of the flowing water and the setting sun. He was gone. As if he had simply faded. I walked back to my office, but I didn't go in. I went home. I went straight to my studio. The light was still too bright, but this time, it felt less like judgment and more like an invitation. I took out my ring and put it on the table. No hiding. No tucking away. It was a reminder of a love that was real, and a promise that had been kept in a way I hadn't understood. I sat down in front of the blank canvas. I didn't paint. I just looked at it. And for the first time in 8 months, I said a prayer that wasn't a demand or a complaint. It was a thank you. Thank you for the stranger who knew my secret. Thank you for not answering my pleas for relief, but instead sending a messenger of truth. Thank you for showing me that his presence wasn't dependent on Liam's life, but on my willingness to be seen. I realized the secret wasn't just about my grief. The secret was that I had been given a second chance at life. A chance to build my faith not on shaky foundations of my rules, but on the solid rock of his unwavering love. I had been tested not with the loss, but with the choice of what to do in the after of the loss. And I knew finally that I was ready to start painting the rest of my story. Not with the colors of my despair, but with the light of my resurrection. Sometimes, we build a wall around our faith and then wonder why God feels so distant. We mistake our comfort for his blessing. And sometimes, the greatest act of love he can perform is to tear down that wall and send a stranger who knows your secret, just to remind you that you were never alone.